Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Real Film Podcast, the podcast where each season we tackle a different topic in film, TV, or gaming. And in this series, we're chatting all about the games made by the developer From Software. In this final episode, we're taking a speculative look forward at the upcoming game Elden Ring, and we're going to chat a bit about what we'd love to see from. Oh, so close to doing
no
that.
So good. Oh.
GG, boy. GG.
Biffed it right at the end. Should I do it again or just that last sentence?
You gotta go again. Yeah, but keep this is the goal up, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah, I mean this is staying in either way, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'll just put a bloop sound. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Real Film Podcast, the podcast where each season we tackle a different topic in film, TV, or gaming. And in this series, we're chatting all about the games made by the developer From Software. In this final episode, we're taking a speculative look forward at the upcoming game Elden Ring, and we're going to chat a bit about what we'd want from the.
You need to change up your scripts, mate, because there's a lot of I can hear it. There's a lot of you give yourself a lot of stumblings.
Yeah,
then,
you have.
I nailed it.
Put a
first
full
time,
stop
though,
in.
Neil. There are some full stops. You don't want silence in podcasts. You know, got to be on.
You got to do it like
It's
a
the-
Louis
it's the-
Theroux style. Just leave them hanging.
Leave him waiting.
No, I'll
It's
go
the
again.
it's the what's the bit that you did there? It was like a boot about. I don't know what it was. It was like about a bit, and it was like you've left yourself open for an attack here, fella.
Can't stop laughing now. Right, this is it. No matter how this one goes, we're using this one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Real Film Podcast, the podcast where each season we tackle a different topic in film, TV, or gaming. And in this series, we're chatting all about the games made by the developer From Software. In this final episode, we're taking a speculative look forward at the upcoming game Elden Ring, and we're going to chat.
It was speculative.
Speculative.
I knew I was going to. I put it in. I was like, "Oh, that sounds fancy," and I knew I'd mess it up.
This is podcast. We look ahead.
So the episode of
Games.
The Office where Kevin just removes all the words from his sentences. Just because it's easier. Why say many word when few word?
In this final episode, we're taking a speculative look forward at the upcoming game Elden Ring, and we're going to have a bit of a chat about what we'd love to see from Software in the future.
Oh,
Yeah, that was good enough. I stumbled a bit.
It's on the cusp.
the
It's fine.
double from.
Yeah. Right. I'm Matt, your host, and I'm joined by Guff,
Hello.
Sam,
Hello.
and Rob.
It's weird you took a sip when you had to say someone else's name and you decided to take a sip.
Because I was looking down, I was like, why is he taking a pause? Has it not come through? I was like,
You've
what?
got
You told-
Pete Tong
you just
you
told me-
today, mate. You've got
just told me to
absolutely
pause.
Pete Tong you.
To be fair,
Have you forgotten everything? Like, I forget speak.
Hey, I did pretty well for most of it.
Yeah, you know what? You did all right until speculative. I think that, but that's a fair enough stumble. That.
It's a hard word. It's a hard
Yeah,
word to say
I'll give you
under
that.
pressure.
Big six-minute intro, though, isn't it? Though?
Yeah. As I mentioned in that flawless intro, we're going to be chatting a bit about Elden Ring, what we're going to expect from it, and then I've got a few questions for the guys about what we can not that we can expect, but what we hope to expect from FromSoft games in the future. Should we get into it? Because there's not much to say apart from let's talk about Elden Ring. No, I've got a lot to say. I'm just saying it all wrong. So Elden Ring, the new upcoming game by From Software, was announced last year at the E3 gaming conference, is it? Whichever one it is.
Conference sounds more professional, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Convention sounds like freaks walking around in fancy dress.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah, it probably is a conference because it's like
you have seen what people walk around E3 in, right?
Yeah, no, it's not
Yeah.
advertised as that, is it?
In groups, I'm triggered. We're in it.
I mean, we are the
during a
freaks.
pandemic.
We are the freaks. Like, let's not beat around the bush.
Speak
Like,
for yourself, mate. So yeah, this kind of came out of absolutely nowhere, if I remember rightly. Like,
yeah, no, I remember being surprised.
Pardon?
Was there not like teasers of it for a while?
I
Or
don't
was
think
the
so.
I think there was teases of a game.
I
think everyone thought it was going to be Bloodborne 2, didn't they? And then
that was Sekiro. People thought Sekiro.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, yeah, it was Sekiro.
Because the arm looked like the prosthetic arm looked like a trick weapon. People were thinking it was like a new trick weapon.
Ah, okay. But they sort of came out about. I'm sure there was like two things that sort of felt announced at the same time. I don't know if it was Sekiro got announced as like a release date for it. And I don't know if Elden Ring got announced as like a teaser at the same time.
Yeah, because I think Sekiro came quite quickly after like the announcement, because I think they worked quite privately on a lot of things. And then Elden Ring, to be fair, there were rumors that it was going to be March this year, that it was potentially going to be coming out. So that would have been well under a year from announcement to release. But I suppose like the biggest shock of it all, obviously, because we know they're a games company, of course they're making games, like we know they're making games, but is that it's co-written by George R.R. Martin, which just seems like...
Which means it'll never be finished, so...
Yeah, exactly that. No wonder it's been pushed back.
And they both bloody love dragons, so...
I mean, debatably, has ever a Dark Souls or Bloodborne game been finished? Lazy Miyazaki at it again.
Yeah, always leaving it... Yeah, that's why you got to put it together yourself, because he doesn't know how to.
Can't bother.
But yeah, I remember watching this, because that last E3 was like the first E3 where I properly like watched stuff that was coming out, and kind of got invested in stuff. So I remember watching this and just being like, oh, like, what is this? This looks cool. And then when you saw like Miyazaki on the screen, you were like, oh god, yeah. And then it was like George R.R. Martin. But it was cool as well because, as we've mentioned numerous times on this series, I watched this as part of like a live stream that the guys at RKG were doing. So they're obviously built their whole company on playing From Software games. So it's quite cool to like watch their reaction live to this trailer when they didn't know anything was like it was being shown either. So that's pretty cool. But I mean, like, have you guys? I think you guys have all watched it at some point, maybe not recently.
Yeah, I just watched it.
Yeah, I watched it before.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since the release.
Yeah, see, I remember being like, oh, that was so cool. But I was a bit like, oh, I don't know what any of it means. It just looks cool and sounds quite cool. So I've gone back to it and like just written a few notes about kind of the impressions that I'm getting from it anyway. So first and foremost, I feel like it feels a lot more like Dark Souls kind of in tone rather than like Bloodborne. You know, it's not that kind of like, or Sekiro or anything like that. It feels quite medievally, but then at the same time, I was like, it feels like high fantasy. Joe is like, I know like Dark Souls is pretty like, you know, magic and monsters, but it's so like grim and just kind of depressing, and it feels quite grounded at the same time, whereas like a lot of this stuff feels quite like almost like Warhammer or something similar to like that. Like it has that kind of that sort of feeling to it, which I think could be quite cool. I mean, that's not like the way I go with fantasy necessarily, but I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, looking at, I didn't realize I've actually like done no sort of looking into it since really, but like, yeah, it looks a lot more like sort of like Final Fantasy, or like I was gonna say like World of Warcraft from like some of the shots that it sort of like puts forward, but even like the odd shot of like, I mean, I'm assuming it's like legit because it's like from Variety, but you know, it looks like someone sort of fighting like some sort of like wildebeest type creature in like a grassy area, and it looks a lot more like sort of the fighting of like Final Fantasy 15, for example. But it also looks a little bit like Monster Hunter in that respect. So it'll be interesting to see sort of like, I mean, you don't get a lot of, considering that's like a large grassy area, it looks like a large field. It feels a little bit more like from just that sort of one screen grab, or those couple of screen grabs, it looks a bit more like something like Legend of Zelda. And it's interesting if it is going down more that sort of like open world route, as in like, because they're all open world games anyway, like Sekiro and Bloodborne and everything like that, but they're all set piece, like they're all very like set piecey, like you have like this one town or this one canyon and things like that, and that feels like a lot bigger than the sort of stuff they would maybe normally put on a level design.
Yeah, no, I think that is where they're trying to take this. That it is more like as you mentioned with Breath of the Wild type thing, where literally you can just it's totally open world to the point where you can literally just go beat the game right at the start. So I don't know if it'll be to that sort of extreme with this, obviously, because obviously both of the people involved in this game are really heavily involved in like building a story and like developing these characters. So the fact that them giving you that choice seems a bit left field, so to say. But
maybe they're just gonna like surprise everyone and go, right, so we've got Miyazaki carefully crafts a load of stories, he really takes his time, you'll get a long gameplay out of this. Same with Game of Thrones writer George R.R. Martin, like he writes books that take you ages to read, takes him ages to finish them. Now you can do this one in about 5 minutes. It's the ultimate Miyazaki power move. Just give you a game that you can barely play because you can do it in like 3 minutes, and then all that build up you wanted, nah, fuck it.
It's just
fuck
the
you.
ends.
Fuck you.
The ends scribbled on the back of a napkin that one of them's holding up to the camera, like, there you go, you fuckers.
Yeah, do you like that? Yeah, fuck off.
But I do get what you mean, because I was watching a video, I think it was Varty doing a video on like the breakdown of the trailer, and he kept saying open world, and I was trying to think like, oh yeah, I guess to a sense like they are open world, like the Dark Souls and Bloodborne and things like that. They're in essence the open world. There is still a story they have to follow and certain things you do in a certain order, so I think maybe it'll deviate away from that, where like for example anyway, you can't just go and fight Nito straight away in Dark Souls 1. You've got to do all this other stuff to then place the Lord Vessel and open it up and all shit like that. So I feel like maybe they're going to try and divert away from that, keep it a bit more open world. But maybe it's just they'll try and patrol it with maybe like difficulty spikes and like enemies or things like that. So it's almost like it's not a set way it's done, but there is an easier way for it to be done, which I feel like the majority of people may end up weaving the way down.
I was gonna say like it feels from so little, it looks aesthetically like I would say more of a traditional RPG. Rather than sort of like what they've done with Dark Souls and what they've done with Bloodborne. And I don't know if I'd go as far as obviously saying Sekiro is an RPG. I don't know where you lot fall on that, but I don't know what it's technically classed as. But I mean, like more so Dark Souls and Bloodborne are more RPGs in terms of like character design and stuff like character building and things like that. But yeah, it feels very much like, I don't know, like we talked in like the last episode that Sekiro is like quite a change of pace to what they normally do, while this feels like it could even be, and I don't know, I don't want to say this like, I'm going to say this tentatively, but like, could it be like too far a change of pace? But who knows? I suppose we'll see, won't we? But
yeah, it's always hard to sell with like trailers like this, you know, especially like games like this. Feels like it's more of a concept trailer than anything else, although I will touch on what the story, I think from what the trailer is, what the story might be. But you see these like characters and stuff, so I'm a bit like, oh, are these, like my instinct is like they're bosses that you're probably going to have to fight along the way, and there seems to be like some pretty cool designs. Like they absolutely love like prosthetic arm, because there's another person with like fitting a prosthetic arm and stuff after like Sekiro. But then like they might just be like NPCs or something like that. I don't know, it looks interesting, but for me there's like aspects that don't seem like they fit together in the same game. Like some of the stuff with like the character design, especially like there's like one really big dude, and you keep cutting back to this kind of like elf kind of person, like hammer. They look like,
you mean see, go on.
No, just like hammering this thing, and that those two things for me don't look like they belong in the same game. So I'm kind of like intrigued about where those two things like fitting together.
Yeah, well, it was that character I kind of wanted to mention, because when the first time I think I watched it, I think I was along the same lines where I thought it was kind of like elfy sort of looking, but then looking back at it, I got more of kind of like a Norse sort of vibe to it, almost like a Viking level. Especially with like he's got a hammer and it's almost like he's a blacksmith, like hitting down on this. I don't know. Some people, I know just from reading some other things, some people speculate it's like he's hitting the Elden Ring and it's broken. If it is a physical ring, that's the whole
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to touch on. So you start by like seeing this guy like hammering something like an anvil, and it's like creating these like bursts of light. It just looks like really, really cool. And then kind of this voiceover starts coming in. And it's obviously talking about whatever the Elden Ring is, whether it's like a physical ring or like a metaphorical thing, but it says about like commanding the stars, giving life its fullest brilliance, and all this sort of stuff. And then goes on to say how it's like broken. So you see this guy like, and it keeps cutting back to this guy like hitting something. So you can kind of like, I presumed anyway, he's breaking the Elden Ring, whatever it is, because it says about it being broken and how like you can, if you look up in the sky, you can see that it's gone or broken or whatever, and there's all this like red in the sky and all that sort of stuff. So it feels like the Elden Ring has some kind of properties that keep the universe sort of held together in a way, is like how I interpret it anyway. And it's like after this guy's like broken it, he kind of falls down on his knees. You know, he doesn't look like it's something he's taking pleasure from, which I thought was kind of interesting, because I'm like, why is he destroying it then? What's he sort of doing? But you get a bit of like, obviously it's like Ring, so it's kind of obvious comparison, but like Lord of the Ring vibes with like the One Ring, like especially like they're trying to destroy it and it having kind of these magical properties of kind of power and creation and all that sort of stuff, which I thought was like pretty cool. And then the last thing I started thinking about was like, who are we going to be within this world? Like, is it going to be like an RPG where we get to like create a character and all that sort of stuff, or is it going to be a bit more like Sekiro where we're a determined character? Because I was like thinking about it being in terms of like George R.R. Martin being on board and being like, well, maybe he would. It's obviously like From aren't opposed to having a set character that the player plays as. So maybe with him being on board, he might be a bit more like, oh well, it's this story, it's this character's story. But then not necessarily that, because obviously he can really build a world. Like there's so much going on like Game of Thrones and stuff, and it's not one person's story, so maybe it could be an RPG.
There's a quote from Miyazaki actually saying how I think it's going back to character creation, because it's quoted down here saying that there's no fixed main character in Elden Ring. We mostly leave it up to the player to decide the characteristics and personality of the character that you create. So sounds like it's going to go back towards a more Bloodborne-y, cool. Dark Souls creation, which I think it sounds like it's the right move to sort of... Not that anyone's disappointed, I think, with like the Sekiro being the one sort of track thing, but I don't know, even from what Guff was saying earlier, I do, in my head, it's only kind of coming together now, but I do kind of see Sekiro in its own sort of like vein of From Software games. I don't know, there's not as much overlap. Clearly, there's not as much overlap anyway, but in terms of like the actual core sort of like what the game is, it definitely does divert the most out of the way, which, not that it was bad, obviously. I mean, I can't wait to play this. So like, it's the next game that I'm going to download now for sure, because I really want to play it, but it definitely does feel like it's almost like a coming home kind of thing, this Elden Ring, at least again from the very early speculations of a 2-minute trailer.
See, it's very odd that is the potential return home, because I don't think it will be. I think it will be like quite a, and even from like the little gameplay screen grabs, like you said, it might be sort of like, you know, really sort of like alpha gameplay. Do you know what I mean? Like sort of like not close to finishing, might just be testing sort of like areas and stuff, and like kind of designs and stuff. But like, I don't know, like it's weird that like the one where Miyazaki's sort of partnering up with someone like George R.R. Martin, like who again is like, he's not just, you know, he's not just bringing someone in that's maybe wrote a couple of cool things. Like this is the guy that's, you know, wrote one of the most successful fantasy book series of all time. It's obviously spawned one of the sort of, until the end, best TV shows of all time. Like this is like a big name in pop culture in general, not just gaming. So it's mad that like that could be a return to like more From Software form. I don't think it will be. I think it'll be really sort of...
I just meant in terms of character creation, really. The actual game's probably going to be way different. I just meant the fact that they're using that mechanic again. It almost just remind me, does like Elder Scrolls, like do they like have a character creation element to them, like Oblivion and stuff like that? They
Yeah.
do, because I'm almost kind of expecting it to kind of take more stock from those types of games for some reason. Just I don't know, it just something that I was in the back of my head from looking at. I don't know if it's the Norse kind of like thing in with me or whatever. Really,
I think the mad weaponry and armor sort of, because I'm getting a similar vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it to me it looks a lot like sort of Skyrim and sort of Witcher vibes, and I kind of hope it is like a big open world RPG. I'd quite like that. I think it'd be something different, and I kind of hope that what they do with it is they give us quite a big lived-in kind of world, because every sort of From game, apart from Sekiro, is pretty much a desolate wasteland. All through Dark Souls, there's not really like anywhere you don't go from town to town and meet loads of villages of people and stuff like that. And I've been playing The Witcher recently, and it is quite nice to get to a new village and like see new people in inverted brackets. So I kind of hope, maybe we'll see like a much bigger world, because I mean, you say Dark Souls is kind of an open world game. It's not really, is it? There's a path that you have to follow. Essentially, you can't run off on a field like you could in Zelda or Red Dead or anything like that. You can't just walk wherever you want. You can't climb up to mountains. You can't walk up hills. You can't jump on most of the games. So I'm hoping it's kind of something a bit more like that, with a bit of space to kind of roam around and look. And what I say is, I really want a world that's kind of like current, like at its peak, one that's not been completely fucked up already.
Yeah, so I kind of hope that it's like not that open. I like the idea, like you said, of it being like populated. I think that's cool. I'd love to see like a world, and that's kind of an idea that I had. What we're going to talk about in a bit, like about where could From Software kind of go in the future. So I'd love to see a world that's like proper populated, but I just like I can properly take or leave like really open world games. Like I just don't really enjoy that kind of running around and just going for an explore. But like I love the way that the From Software games do it, that you can kind of run around and run into little corners that I like that kind of it, where there are corners that you don't need to go to for the game, but you've not got to run like 20 minutes across the map to like get a little Easter egg. I like going through these little bits, discovering little areas, figuring it out, and then going, okay, back to like the main path sort of bit now. It's that like, but I'd love to see like a world, as you say, that's kind of a bit more populated and not down and out like every single like From Software game is. But I don't know if that's what we're going to get, because obviously if the trailer takes place before the game, the Elden Ring, whatever it is, this powerful force has just been destroyed by the sound of it. So, but it'd be quite cool to see like if it's just as it's destroyed, so the world's still populated. It's not gone all into ruin yet, but it's slowly like going downhill. Might be quite cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I'd like a mix of both. Like I think I'd like sort of. I think I'd kind of just like to see what more Miyazaki than George R.R. Martin, because we sort of know the fantasy worlds that he builds, and we've sort of seen that sort of in a more conventional sense. I mean, the two of them writing together will be really cool. But I think it'd be really sort of interesting to see how they almost change and like adapt a format that is sort of very conventional. Like, we have very, very popular games like Skyrim, like The Witcher, bit more like sort of Horizon Zero Dawn as well, and things like that. Games that obviously very open world, a lot of side missions, a lot of NPCs, a lot of things like that. But it'd be cool to see sort of what like the FromSoft stamp on that. So like whether it is like some of those more nuanced stuff, like building the story through, like, because I think that's maybe like something that is obviously really appealing about, I suppose, having like desolate worlds, is that like you have these worlds where like NPCs barely give you any information other than what they're currently doing at the time. They have these missions and you're helping them with them, and that's sort of about it. Well, like you say, like a lot of the world building comes from item descriptions and finding little sort of nooks and crannies and piecing these stories together. While I think, like you say, if we're sort of experiencing the world in its present, as in like the Elden Ring has just been broken, if that's what it is, and the world is sort of suffering, and it's like more of a, and you know, that would play into George R.R. Martin's field, like sort of like political events moving with stories and like seeing how the world shifts because of certain events and things like that. And it would be cool to see that, but I would love to see it with a sort of, I'd just love to sort of see them take an approach on it, and I hope that it has, because every game they've done has been really individual. I hope this has its sort of like individuality. Like I hope that you don't, once this comes out and you see the story and things like that, I hope you don't just go, oh well, this is Skyrim, this is Witcher, because I do think obviously there is something that FromSoft bring, like with all, you know, this whole series has been about just how special these games are and how different they are. I'm really sort of keeping my fingers crossed that we see like, it's almost like seeing like, I mean, I'm a massive comic book fan. It's almost like when you go, I want to see this artist draw this comic book because I want to see what their art, like, I want to see how this illustrator brings this character to life, and brings their style to it. In a similar way, I would love to, or like a sort of band covering a song, I sort of want to see how Miyazaki would do The Witcher, for example, which I think could be a very interesting sort of approach. But
yeah, and like I'm like, as I was kind of saying before, I don't think I finished my point properly, but like what my last thought was like, who are we within this game? So yeah, that's when Sam kind of went on to say that it is going to be an RPG, which I'm pretty happy about. It was interesting. I was speaking to our friend Paul about Sekiro, and he said he took him ages to like get into it, and he really wasn't liking it, and he still doesn't, like, he thinks the combat, as we were kind of saying in the last episode, is like the best it can be, but like the rest of the game you can just like take or leave it really. And he was just saying how like the main reason is because it's not like, I mean he kind of had problems with the story as well. They've not gone too much into with him because I've not finished it yet, but he was saying like the story and kind of the fact that you're a set character, and he kind of made an interesting point that it's so less replayable than the others because you can't like play it in a different way. The fact that you only have one weapon, you can't then go, well, I'm going to do a magic build, I'm going to do this build, that build. You just can't do any of that with Sekiro, which I hadn't really thought about, like, because I was thinking about it and I was like, I have really enjoyed it, but I've not got that like burning ambition to keep going back to Sekiro. Like, I really want to play it and I want to complete it, and I will do at some point, but it's like I've just started playing Dark Souls 3 again because I've never actually finished Dark Souls 3, and I've just been playing that like so much and just wanted to keep going. Like every time I've completed a bit, I've gone like, well, I'm going to go further now. I'm going to go further. I'm going to do this, going to do that, which I haven't had with Sekiro. So yeah, I really hope that Elden Ring kind of goes back to that kind of level of gameplay. But like one of the things I had was like, what? Obviously, like even though you in Bloodborne and in Dark Souls you're just a normal person. I mean, you are called like the chosen undead, and you are like, you know, the hunter that goes to the hunter's dream in Bloodborne, but generally you are like normal people. You're not like a hero. You're not like you're not like Link in Breath of the Wild. You know what I mean? You're not some legendary hero. You're not a prince. You're not an earl. You're just some guy who just manages to be the person that does it all. Because like, especially in Dark Souls, it's like so many people have come before you and failed on their quest. And even in Bloodborne, you know, there are NPCs that go, I used to be like you, I'm not anymore, sort of thing. So you're just a long line, like someone in a long line. So I'm like, who are we in this? Are we going to be like trying to reforge the Elden Ring, almost like in Dark Souls 3, where you've got to like collect the souls to like bring them back together? Are we going to be trying to like bring the Elden Ring back together? Is that going to be the quest? That's kind of where I would think the game's going to end up going.
Yeah, I mean, sort of on that point, like I think one of those sort of things that you get from Bloodborne and Dark Souls is that you bring, you know, you're not necessarily sort of making there's not an awful lot of, I would say, oh no, I was going to say there's not a lot of diverging choices, but I think there is. But I think, you know, you don't make sort of like when you get like The Witcher or Fallout, where you might make like dialogue choices that will then affect relationships, because you don't ever hear your character speak in Bloodborne or in Dark Souls. I feel like it's a much more sort of blank canvas, because you can bring a lot more of like yourself, like you say, like you can bring different play styles. You're like, all right, well, I'll play this by relinking. You know, my goal is to relink the flame, and I'm gonna have a magic build, and I'm gonna wear this type of armor and things like this, and like that's all one thing. And then again, like very replayable because you can do the whole thing completely different. While yeah, with Sekiro, you are one set character. But I think as well, you know, I think we've mentioned it before. I personally really like, and the thing that really drew me in, I think it drew a lot of us in, once we really understood how Bloodborne and Dark Souls works, is that the story is built through interpretation, and it is sort of like it's the more unspoken stuff, and I think that's where maybe Sekiro isn't as sort of good. I mean, not necessarily as good, but I think it's again an interesting sort of, you know, it's one of those things of going, all right, well, how would Miyazaki do Tenchu or Ninja Gaiden? Like, what would he bring to a like sort of a game that already exists in, you know, that format? But I think again, like, it'd be cool to see a return of that. Sekiro is very expositional. Like, you get a lot of story through like just talking to NPCs. Well, I don't feel you get that as much in Dark Souls, and I think that is a good thing, or it's a good thing for the From Software games. And I would sort of like something similar, because I think that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, definitely. That's about it. That's all I've got to say about the trailer for Elden Ring. I think it looks really cool, and like, as I've kind of said about Dark Souls before, I'm a big fantasy fan, so like I'm all over this.
So I was just going to talk a bit about what George R.R. Martin is potentially going to bring to this collaboration, if he can be bothered to actually take part and write anything. Please go and finish Game of Thrones, because it's got to be better than the fucking end of the show, isn't it? Jesus Christ.
In this working duo, it's be surprising that Michael Zacky's not the lazy one.
Not the lazy one, yeah. Oh, fucking hell, yeah. Two lazy bastards, just crazy mad wizards on their own, just sat there writing nonsense.
I tell you what, though, he's been given a bit of a good get out of jail free, or he's been given a good second chance, hasn't he? Fucking George R.R. Martin.
It's all a ploy, wasn't it? He was like, "Oh, just let them do it."
Yeah. You just.
He had two endings in his head. One of them he gave to the show to see how it turned out.
And then he just didn't. And he's like, "Ooh, better actively avoid that one."
Plan B. Yeah, like we spoke. Like, I think you said like the words. This is literally something in my head, Matt. You were saying like it looks like high fantasy, and that was literally something that I'd thought George R. R. Martin might bring to this. Like, he does have this sort of very classical kind of fantasy thing about him, but it is also, his stuff's also very character driven. And I kind of mentioned in your segment where I think this is, if it is kind of anything like George R. R. Martin, it could be a much more kind of populated world with more characters, and not just a simple, I'm not saying Dark Souls is simple, Dark Souls is like your mission is to do one thing. And this is kind of why I think it might be a bit more open world in the sense that there might be different kind of factions that you're involved in, rather than, you know, Dark Souls, you've got different NPCs which might be on different sides. I think you might have different either towns or cities or countries or whatever who you might have to like weave in and out of. So I think it might be a bit more kind of, obviously we spoke about how ambiguous Dark Souls and Bloodborne, their stories are. I think it's going to be a bit more complicated, and you might have a bit more choice about the road that you take through the film.
Yeah, it's literally like, I've got this written down for what we're going to go on to like in a bit, which is like what we would potentially want to see From Software tackle in the future, which one of my things was like a bit more choice, and not choice in terms of like, obviously Dark Souls and Bloodborne both have like various endings and different bits and pieces, but like the way you get there is like the same, and it'd be cool to see them do a game like, as you say, like George R. R. Martin does like great warring factions like Game of Thrones. That's literally what the whole thing's about. And From Software do that well as well. You know, you've got like the Healing Church, you've got the University in Bloodborne, you've got in especially Dark Souls 3, you've got the kind of angelic kind of warriors invading Lothric and that sort of stuff. So they do it well as well in a kind of a subtler way. So it'd be cool to see this where you can pick sides and choose sides, and like enemies behave differently to you depending on who you are. Kind of, because I know some of the Covenant stuff in Dark Souls does work kind of a little bit in that way. Like sometimes enemies won't attack you if you're part of certain covenants and that sort of thing. But it'd be cool to see like that on a much bigger scale. Like you can pledge yourself to these like houses or these factions, and then they're your allies. But then obviously that will make you enemies elsewhere. Or you can do it on your own, and you can get through the worlds, without pledging yourself to anyone. Like, I think that'd be a really cool way to do it.
I agree. Like I was gonna say, like I think it'd be really cool if you could sort of, because I think like you say the Covenant sort of stuff, like. I mean, it has sort of like, it feels like it has quite small. I won't say small sort of in comparison, because obviously we don't know what we're gonna get. But I mean, it feels like there's a lot of potential there for like a bigger role in a game, and like that they haven't seen yet. Especially with like ideas of like sort of real life sort of invaders. Like for anyone who doesn't know, like there is, if you play online, you can get on like Dark Souls or Bloodborne. You get like certain invaders come in, especially on Dark Souls, where it's like if you have like, am I right in saying if you go into certain areas that's protected by a covenant you're not in, that like a member of that covenant can come in, but it's like an actual player, and they can basically have a little fight with you, and they can either obviously derail your thing and send you back to a bonfire, or they die and they just go back to wherever. But
you kind of get invaded by people in like different covenants, especially around like Aldrich and like Pontiff's area and stuff like that. But then also there's, if you join, I think it's the Blue Sentinels, you can get summoned into like if someone else in that covenant gets invaded, you're called to like go and help them fend off this person, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I think if like Rob said, if there was this sort of option to like choose maybe like a town or something like that, like I think it'd be really cool if you had like these big skirmishes. Like I suppose the best way I could sort of describe it off, like, well, the first thing that comes to mind is like team deathmatch on like COD, where you have like two teams in like a map fighting. But if you had that as like a big skirmish, like if you think like Game of Thrones, for example, where you have like Daenerys's men versus like not Jon's men, sorry, but like the people from the north versus the people from like the south and stuff like that, where you have like these fights within the city, and it's like whether it's like fighting multiple people or just hand to hand, like one-on-one combat and things like that. Like if you could have like big like if you're like, I'm playing this game right now and I've been invited into this like war to defend my covenant, and it's just like this big online sort of match. I think like shit like that would be amazing. I think that's like again bringing something that like covenant system saw more in the forefront, especially with someone like Game. Like I was just gonna straight up call it Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones mine.
When you take someone like him, who again you said is like very good at writing warring factions, I think when you have a system like a covenant system built into your games previously, it would feel like a wasted opportunity not to make that bigger when it comes to like, again, a game about warring factions, if that is what it's about. But I wanted to say I thought it was an interesting point you made earlier about the sort of prevailing character we see in the Elden Ring trailer of this guy like hitting an anvil. Because I'm gonna provide a twist to that potential narrative, which is what if he's like fixing it, but he's more like Gwyn, like this character who is the main antagonist, if you will, but is trying to fix something that's broken. But it seems like he's in quite a abandoned, like desolate area. He's on his own. I think it'd be cool if we sort of, whether you can, like, to throw it into Dark Souls sort of terminology, it'd be cool if you could ally yourself with Analondo in that game and defend what like Gwyn stands for. And if there was like an option for that in this game, I think that'd be like really cool as well. But I think we'll sort of get more of that. To kind of go back to your question, Rob, I think that's what George R.R. Martin will bring to it, is sort of those deeper looks at characters. At least I hope it is. Like, you know, whether it's because again, like going back to what we said before, but like Dark Souls and Bloodborne sort of feel desolate, and they feel like the damage has already been done. Like it would be cool if like I keep comparing it to Dark Souls, but I think it is quite a fair comparison. Is if like Gwyn has relinked the fire and he's already done that and he's already failed when you play Dark Souls. So it'd be cool if like Elden Ring is like again present and going, well, what if you were there while these big world events were happening? Like how would you be a part of those big world events rather than the aftermath and sort of how you resolve them? Like how would you be involved in them happening at present? And again, I think that's something George R.R. Martin can bring to the table, because he's very good at writing those characters and their motivations and things like that. So yeah,
that'd be cool.
George just needs to pull his
Fair
finger
enough.
out, doesn't he?
Yeah, get writing, mate. You got fuck all else on. Your show was shit, and he's stuck indoors. Go and write the bloody book.
Go write something better, mate.
Yeah, do you ever talk about aliens and werewolves? Do you reckon you could do more about aliens and werewolves? I hear you mates with me, Zach, you know.
Yeah, actually, that's what you saying about aliens. That has reminded me of something that I don't know. I've literally no idea why this is kind of an idea that I got from the Elden Ring trailer, but it being kind of
just going to call it some really mad conspiracy. And what if like coronavirus is caused by aliens?
Aliens, man.
What if
aliens.
George R.R. Martin is an alien?
Aliens, man.
What if the fifth ring that should have been on the poster is really a 5G tower, and that's where it's gone to infect us?
No. No, I was just going to say, I kind of get like some kind of like cosmic vibes, and I don't know why. Like, I really have no idea why, but I'm like, it feels again that maybe the linking is that like Warhammer kind of thing of being, you know, different worlds and some alien stuff kind of linking in there. I've no idea, like I can't pinpoint why I got that impression, but straight away I got that kind of weird impression. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there when you said about
I mean, I could see
aliens.
I could see the guy I was saying, like the Norse-looking guy with the hammer, him being like in space or something.
Yeah, kind of like
there's a lot of mythology that links over with stuff like that. So
exactly, I feel it almost in like a Thor kind of space way, not in like
cool,
a Star Trek kind of space way.
Well, I think that's why I sort of find a lot of I get a lot of Final Fantasy vibes, and Final Fantasy does sort of mix magic and science, magic and sci-fi sort of quite well, where it's like, you know, like Final Fantasy 7 is very steampunk, but then you've got like this idea of like magic being prevalent and things like that, but they work very much hand in hand. I very much feel those vibes. Like, again, I think that's like a cool approach, especially with like fantasy games. I think it's like cool to sort of blend, because like you say, we've had like Dark Souls that's sort of like much more traditional sort of medieval fantasy.
Yeah,
cool to see something a bit more sort of an amalgamation of bits and bobs.
And then to finish off the episode and the series, I thought we could have a nice little chat about what we might like to see from Software in the future. So maybe that's like a genre of game, or exploring something else from a past game, or just anything you'd like to see integrated within their games to improve them. But I thought a good place to start would be, do you want to see Bloodborne 2?
Nah.
Rob shaking his head.
I don't need it.
No.
I don't know what you do.
You live as a slug.
That's why you're not me as Zaki, mate. Yeah. He's got it all in his noggin.
To be fair, if they released it, obviously I'd buy it and play it day one. Obviously I would. But in my head right now, I'm not like, I need them to explain this particular part of the game, or you can't do a sequel to that game. I don't know what you do. And a prequel would just kind of, I mean, I suppose you could do a prequel in like the times of the church in like its height, or Bergenworth. I don't really know, but I don't feel like I really need that.
I think you could only do a prequel. I don't think you could do a sequel.
Yeah, I just don't feel like I need that, and I feel like the story's kind of there already for me. But yeah, I would play it obviously, because I love that. That's probably my favorite. I think genuinely it is my favorite game I've ever played. But I'm not one of these people who thinks a sequel or a prequel ruins the original, because that's fucking stupid. Just don't play it if you don't care. Like if they announced it, I would be really excited, but I can't think what they would do with it unless anyone else has any ideas of where it might go.
I mean, prequel's a good shout. I think like maybe like sort of exploring, because I like the idea of like maybe just before sort of the splitting of like Lawrence and I always forget his other like the other guy's name.
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, Willem. Yeah, yeah, but before they sort of part ways, so like when before sort of like the healing church and things like that, like I think that's like a really interesting thing, and like the idea of being, I don't know, like I think the idea of like just Bergenworth University, I think is like a really cool concept, and like going back to like Yarnum and like maybe expanding that world a little bit, so like maybe like towns in the area, because like there's that bit where you go to Castle Canehurst and you sort of like, it's through like an actual cutscene, but you pretty much fast travel there. Do you know what I mean? Like you essentially just fast travel to a castle.
Well, yeah, and then you look behind you and your horse is dead. So it's like, how did you get there? Like the horse all of a sudden has been dead for like years. It seems a bit.
It's been 10 years. No, I don't know. Like I think again, like it's one of those things, isn't it, where you're like, you don't know what other story. I imagine people felt the same way about Star Wars. Like New Hope is a story of a load of people who end up blowing up the bad guy's spaceship, and that's seemingly them done. And that's sort of what it was intended to be. But it turns out George Lucas had an idea, a lot of bad ones, but he had an idea about where it could go, and this world and this universe that he created. So I suppose it's one of those, just going like, does Miyazaki sort of have an idea that feels like a natural progression? But I don't think that, like, a sequel would be mental. I think you just got to think, what would the story be? Because the world is there, and like the aftermath is there. Do you know what I mean? Like we've seen a world where these like strange creatures are revered. Because I think again, you could say the same about Dark Souls 1. Is, do you need a sequel? We sort of have everything we have, and Dark Souls 3 very much harks back to Dark Souls 1, and it's more sort of like the world thereafter.
It's the same game,
and you sort of like dealing. Yeah, it's the same game, but you are sort of dealing with like a load of new elements that like it. All it is that, I mean, to really sort of like put it in layman's in like, but this doesn't mean I hate it. But Dark Souls 3 is the story about how fucking loads of people did what you did in Dark Souls 1 and it didn't work. Like that is essentially
it's
what
like
it
a Where
is.
Are They Now as well.
Yeah, it's the final season of Parks and Rec. That's what it is. But yeah, I'd see that for Bloodborne. I'd see Gurman with a wig. Gurman working. He's expanded his workshop into a whole new carpenter business, and he's hired all his brothers to help him.
Very good workshop.
I think like what like Dark Souls lends itself to in terms of a sequel, and I don't really mean Dark Souls 2, which does kind of take place at a very different point in history, and even though they are kind of connected, they kind of aren't, but like the whole story of Dark Souls 1 and 3 is this, as you said, this kind of idea of a cycle of lighting the fire, trying to keep the fire going. So when you get to 3, it's been lit and relit that many times to try and keep the world, like the Age of Fire, alive, that there are only like embers left, and that's why you have to like gather up multiple kind of bosses that have linked the fire to get their like fire, because there's hardly any left anymore. And then you can kind of choose to light it again at the end, but kind of a lot of the time it's that question of going, if you've played 1, you kind of look at it and go, well, I did that in 1 and now I've played 3 and nothing's changed. And like you could go, like as Rob said, it is the same game essentially. You are doing a very similar thing. You're doing the same thing, but it kind of, with retrospect, it kind of works that you kind of look at it in a different way and go, because you might like throughout the first one be like, I've got to save the world, and then by the end of 3 you're like, I need to save the world, but I need to change it as well. I need to do it in a different way. Whereas like with Bloodborne, I feel like at the end of Bloodborne, you kind of, I mean, I suppose if you let Gehrman sacrifice you at the end of Bloodborne, that cycle does continue then, I suppose. Whereas like if you defeat Gehrman and the Moon Presence and everything else, that feels like quite a finite like ending.
There is
whereas like
there is the other ending though, isn't there? Where
you wake up in Happy Yarn.
Or no, as in like you take Gehrman's place.
Oh yeah,
as in like the Moon
place,
Presence turns you into like what Gehrman was, and then it gets the cycle up. But then again, it's that whole thing of, well, what's the story going to be if it's just there's another guy in a wheelchair now, and it's not anything else different there.
Yeah, I always feel like, because I feel the same with Dark Souls 3, I feel like Dark Souls 3 is a definitive ending, that like things are different now. It's not just that cycle over and over again, and like Bloodborne for me feels that way. But I feel like a prequel could work, or like a sidequel. So like Canehurst Castle, as you said, Guff, is a really cool area that I think would be quite interesting to potentially explore a little more, and how they fit into the whole kind of the hunt and beasts and blood, and where they kind of come into it. I think would be quite an interesting angle to take without treading too much on. Because I think if you maybe do prequel Bergenworth and stuff like as we've kind of explained before, stuff's kind of pieced together and figured out, and people have fan theories, and like as obviously as Rob said, like a sequel or prequel never destroys the original. It's still there, but it can change your opinions on things. Like I've been playing Dark Souls 1 and 3 simultaneously for various reasons, and the kind of whole the Solaire thing, I'm kind of like dead sad about that. It's like definitive that he's not like Gwyn's son anymore. And like if you read the item descriptions, you're just like I kind of understand why people think that, but I've only ever really gone off that because people have gone, yeah, that's a really prominent thing, and there are hints to it. But when you read his item description, it's just like he's nobody. He just tries really hard. Like that's basically what his item descriptions say for like a lot of it. And I'm just like, oh, he kind of goes from being this, this all powerful son of the son of God, but he doesn't know it, to he's just a bit of like he just tries really hard, and it's a bit sad. And like I wouldn't want like stuff to retrospectively get like that with Bloodborne, if that makes sense.
I think there's a prime opportunity though, like, because you can argue you don't need it, but again, with a great sort of writing team and things like that, and obviously with the incredible sort of team behind From Software, but like obviously they've opened they have this whole thing of interdimensional creatures. It is sort of like, it is very, we've sort of like called them aliens, but they are just like interdimensional creatures. So more sort of like, what's he called? The writer? His name evades me. The writer that these books are like Cthulhu and stuff like that. Lovecraft, yeah, like it's very Lovecraftian. And there again, like all sort of like these like interdimensional creatures. Could that be something where it's like exploring sort of parallel dimensions and going through and like a really deep dive into that lore, not necessarily Yharnam, not necessarily sort of like hunters traditionally sort of looked at, but could we see a sequel? I mean, maybe you could call this a sidequel, but like the world of Bloodborne, like that sort of Lovecraftian universe and things like that. Could you see that, but with a whole new story, and like maybe like nothing from Bergenworth, nothing to do with Yharnam, but just maybe the old ones, maybe like another part of the world visited by old ones, and sort of how that was then interpreted and things like that. Yeah, that's again, like it's one of those where I'm like, I don't think, looking at Bloodborne, I mean, maybe you could say like, what would I want to see him tackle, and maybe like a ninja film would, like a ninja genre would come up, and you'd go, yeah, that could be cool. But then I think when you start comparing it to other games that you've seen, you go, oh, would it work with Miyazaki and stuff like that? But he's a clever sod, isn't he? So I'm sure he'd make it work.
He can figure it out. I think if there was never one, I wouldn't be disappointed. If there was one, I'd play the crap out of it. Like I'm in that kind of boat that I'm sure I'd love it and I'd play it so much, but I would never be disappointed if it was like, this isn't a thing that's happening ever. So I think if that makes sense.
I just want more of that.
Mate, you've not completed the first one yet. Complete the first one, and then you can ask for a sequel. What I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. But no, I think it'd be a shame when, because again, like I think the whole thing is like, I know that I don't know much about Demon Souls, but it feels very close to Dark Souls in a lot of ways. sort of like aesthetically as well. And again, you have Dark Souls 1, you have Dark Souls 2, you have Dark Souls 3 that are sort of like, again, sort of like very similar, more medieval fantasy. I think it'd be a shame to just have the one of Bloodborne. Again, maybe it does take like a Dark Souls 2 route and just go like, we're quite removed, but it's a similar aesthetic. I think I'd like more of that sort of gothic aesthetic, because again, like that is something that I sort of appreciate more. Is what attracted me to Bloodborne in the first place. I think more of that I'd be like happy with.
That's fair enough. I think like Canehurst would be a cool, and the Vile Bloods would be like a cool.
Yeah, because again, like that's like what I sort of expected from Bloodborne.
Loads of it, yeah.
Was like much more sort of like vampires and werewolves. I think because like obviously this is about the old ones, but if it was a case of like we know why these people turn into beasts in Bloodborne, and it's because of like old ones and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that shit stops. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if you had like a game that was more focused on, again, sort of gothic horror stuff, I think that'd still be cool. I think that'd still be enjoyable.
Oh yeah, as I say, I'd play all over that. Next thing I was thinking about is kind of like, because as I said with like Dark Souls 3, that feels like such a defined ending for me, especially the DLC, the second DLC anyway. Like, I'm actually playing the first lot of DLC for the first time, and I am not a fan. I love the story, but the gameplay, like the enemies placement and the enemy types, is just it feels like Dark Souls 2, where it just feels like there's just so many enemies here, and it's just stupid, like trying to get through any part of the game. So I've ended up just like speed running through most of it to get to the boss. But I love the story of it. But anyway, I was thinking about like areas of Dark Souls I'd potentially want to see more of, but not that I want there to be a Dark Souls 4, but just in my head of stuff going, I wish that was more fleshed out. And like the main one was like the Consumed King, Osiris and his baby Ocelot. I'm like, that stuff does not get fleshed out in any way, shape or form. Yeah. It's just like, oh yeah, you kind of get the idea that he's been doing experiments. He's turned himself into a dragon. And
although it's just he's turned himself into a dragon, that's it. That's all you're getting.
Yeah, but he's like was obsessed with dragons, managed to turn himself into one. You know, his wife left him because of the turning himself into a dragon thing.
It's because of the dragon thing, isn't it?
Probably the dragon thing, yeah.
Wasn't taking the bins out though, so
you don't do the dishes. Never do your washing up. Never change the nappies.
Our baby's invisible, and you're a dragon all of a sudden.
Yeah. But yeah, with that boss, you kind of, it is a side area of Dark Souls 3, not one that you need to do, but you get in there, he's this big dragon dude, and you know from the lore that he's like the king of Lothric, the queen of Lothric's gone, he's turned himself into a dragon through like the teachings of like Seath from the first game, but he's got this like baby, and he's kind of like cradling something, but it's invisible, but you can hear it crying. And it's like, and he goes up, like he's one of the few bosses that kind of constantly talks to you throughout the fight. And I'm just like, I like want to know what is the baby? Where's the baby? Why is it invisible? Is it really there? Is it dead? Is it alive? And it just never gets like fleshed out in any way, shape or form. And I'm a bit like, I'd love to know like what was actually like going on there, sort of thing. And like the whole like kind of probably linking into that in a way, the whole like civil war in like Lothric and stuff like that. And like it feels, I suppose it's world building, like, because that's not the main quest. The main quest is gathering the Lord Souls to bring them back to either light the fire or become the Dark Lord. But I'm just like, I want to know, like, I want to know what's going on here with this baby thing.
See, I was looking up into a little bit of lore, because am I right in saying that it's in the same sort of city or part of the world where you fight the Nameless King?
No. He's literally in Lothric Castle.
That's right next to Lothric Castle.
Okay.
Yeah, you literally like, basically you defeat the dancer in the main cathedral, and then you go up a ladder, and you can either go straight onto Lothric Castle, which leads you onto like Dragon Slayer armor and Duke's Archives and the twins, or you can just take a left straight away and it goes to like the Consumed Garden, which is part of Lothric Castle, just like the garden off it, and he's like down there because he's like the king of Lothric, so he's still like knocking around. But yeah, I just think it's a really cool side area and cool side story that's never fleshed out. And I always remember watching Prepare to Try, and one of them kind of going, "Oh, I think the baby's going to be like in the DLC. I think that's what the DLC is going to be." And it's not like I'm disappointed where the DLC went, because the DLC for like Dark Souls 3, as I said, the gameplay wise, I'm not like 100% sold on it, but like the story wise, especially like the second part of it, is really cool. So, but I'd kind of like to have seen more of that in some kind of respect within the game or DLC or whatever. Sam, I think you said you were looking back at some stuff, so I'm just going to chuck it to you and hope that you have something to say. Nope, he's got nothing to say.
My mouse wasn't working on my mute button then, so it was kind of stuck with that. So no, sorry, I was just checking something before I went into it. Anyway, yeah, sorry. The bit that I was kind of looking at, famously, in Dark Souls 1, obviously they kind of had to rush all the Izalith kind of stuff, like in terms of like production and like getting it done for the game. So I think it was always something that I kind of felt was like, because I mean it's home to the shitest boss in the entire game. Easily enough. I know Matt's still having flashbacks from
Better Chaos.
Yeah, just
worst thing ever.
Yeah, just being because it's just bullshit. But anyway, but the whole
it is like, considering like she's one of the Lord Souls as well. It's just like
exactly.
Like you see in the opening cinematic, you hear about the Witch of Izalith and her Daughters of Chaos, and you're like, "Ooh, this sounds badass," and you're like, "Oh, it's the worst area in the game." It's so disappointing.
She's a fucking tree.
She's a big old...
Yeah,
it's like. Right, yeah, we've got so we've got Nito, we've got Gwyn, right, we've got another Lord Soul. It's like, well, you've actually already put in a lot of bosses. You've actually given a lot of sort of boss status to a lot of the Witch of Izalith's children. It seems the file size is getting a bit close.
She's a tree.
Do you want to like what was the sort of plans? Can we cut out the big fuck it? Nah, I'm not in the arse. Make her a tree.
Yeah,
Couldn't give a fuck. Not even asked.
It's like...
She was going to be a big fucking witch. It was going to look really cool. But nah, if you're telling me the file size, well, no, we can fit her in. It's like, no, you've said it now. I'll make her a big fucking tree. You asked for it. Make her a tree.
It's like the fact that like in these games more than like usual, the boss fights are so well thought out and so well kind of balanced, and like even though they're hard, you just learn them, and then you. Like, I did it with, like, the twins the other day. Like, I went in, didn't take a single thing off them, got hit 3 times and died on my first run. By my 4th run, I'd hit them once, and I was just like, this is impossible. Kind of, like, 15 minutes later, I defeated the first stage, and then, like, half an hour after that, I defeated them. And it's like the thing, you go in and just go, this is impossible. And then you just learn it and figure out the way it works, and... they work better than most of the games, and then Better Chaos is just so unfair all the time and so bad. But I actually RKG did a stream of it, and I got where they were summoning in as one of them did the platinum for it, so I got summoned in. And I've been summoned in a couple of times and hadn't.
I saw all of the instances. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, so like,
I was like, you poor bastard.
I got summoned in a few times. I was like desperate to get summoned in. So the first time. The first time he tries to summon me in and just doesn't click the button, so it doesn't get me in. And then the time I actually get in is in like the catacombs, and we're like running down, and he like turns a bridge, and like there's 3 of us in and him. 2 of them fall off this bridge and die, but then the spikes are facing up, so I can't get on the bridge, so I have to go the long way down. So I end up like on my own, and then to be fair, I end up like bossing this Gwyn's knight that's down in the catacombs, but then I end up dying to the little wheel dudes, and then I got summoned in again, and then the guy who was doing the stream, his connection went down.
Was that in the Crystal Caves?
Yeah, in the Crystal Caves.
Funny.
And
have you watched it back?
And then I got summoned.
No, you don't move. Your character's just perfectly still.
Oh yeah, I did actually. I
forward.
saw it, and he was like, "King Slug, that's an interesting technique." And then his connection went down.
I was like, what?
And then. And then I got summoned in again, and then I got caught between 2 weird statue things and died. And I was like, oh, this isn't going well. But I got summoned in for Better Chaos. I destroyed one of the orbs. Like, I did a mint run round, got one of them. The other guy went the other way, got the other one. And then you got to jump down the middle, and you have to, like, jump and roll onto this, like, tree thing. and I like legged it, and it's such a hard part. Like you always get knocked off all the time. I used to dodge everything, get there, jumps, thought I'd absolutely nailed it, like hit the branch and just slid into the darkness below, and I was like, oh, that's when we went to triumph from. Just like completely.
Well, I was gonna say you wanted balance. That's that's the most balanced boss you can have. It's like it's left, right, good night, innit? You go left, you go right,
and then you fall off into the darkness.
and then you fall off.
But yeah, the boss is terrible.
Yeah,
Sorry, Sam,
no. It's just I would have liked a bit more. And then there's always these like people have mentioned about the whole like King of Izalith and stuff like that, and how maybe it was going to be something it led up to later on in the game or anything like that. And so I was looking into Izalith and stuff like that, and then they started mentioning the Great Swamp at one point as well, and realised that was never really something that was just a mentioned thing in the first Dark Souls. I don't know if in 3 did they really give you... I know there are swamps in there, but it doesn't really connect.
Miyazaki loves
He does.
swamps.
He fucking loves the... I mean,
especially poisonous swamp.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole point that they never got... Like, you meet Laurentius, he talks about the Great Swamp. He talks about this whole, like, it being the birthplace of pyromancy and stuff, but then you also hear that the Witch of Izalith created pyromancy, so it made me think, like, wait, is Izalith supposed to be this Great Swamp kind of thing that like gets connected in? Because then the whole thing later down the line where Laurentius goes hollow, you fight him in Blighttown, which in essence is kind of a roundabout way to end up getting you to Izalith. So I didn't know whether or not it was going to be this whole connection where maybe the Great Swamp could be explored a bit more, because it talks about all this fire being involved and like how you get in touch with nature, and I can imagine some of the enemies you could fight there be a bit all like fire based and stuff, because I guess all the lava and shit you get in Izalith kind of gets you thinking about that. But no, I feel like it was just an area of that game that just it was just a shit. We've got 20 minutes until this goes live. Just Control C, Control C, Control V, copy and paste. Fucking get it all done. Just whack it out. It's done.
Yeah, it's like all the enemies. It's like 3 enemy types in like there. There's like the big Henry Hoover things.
Yeah.
There's like the statues.
Yeah, well,
and there's like the Taurus demons, and there's like a couple of Capra demons as well.
And
which are already enemies earlier in the game.
That's the thing. The only other thing that I think isn't is the bounding dragons, and I'm pretty sure they're just a pair of legs. It's almost like
they're just.
It's almost like Cow and Chicken, where they look at the parents in that one episode, and it scarred everyone for life. It's just.
I never even knew what they were for ages. I was just like, what are these big leg things that you can just run past?
Fucking legs,
like,
yeah, it's mad. But
I like the idea that it is literally just all the assets that they had. Like, they're like, oh, we made loads of the Capra demon, and we ended up only making him like one boss. Like we thought we were gonna we decided to just fucking like. We didn't have a boss, so we took one of the Capra demon and put him in there with some dogs. And then we had loads left over. Dump him in the lava. That's how lava works in a game. Dump him in the lava.
But yeah,
it's Miyazaki's bin.
Essentially, that's what I feel like a lot of people kind of get to. I mean, in terms of story, I guess it does make sense, the whole like creating demons, and like it would stand to reason.
It makes sense that they're there and stuff like that. And obviously there's like the Centipede Demon and the Demon Fire Sage, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like...
Demon Fire Sage is just like Asylum Demon with a bit of fire on him. Yeah, it's a bit like, come on.
Yeah, it's strange that... Because it's a really small area as well. Like I replayed it the other day. And it's just so small. It's such a shame like that... It you know, you kind of get this idea of like what happened to Quelaag and the Fair Lady and Quilana and Ceaseless Discharge and everything like that, and then the actual area is just, you know, you just run through it because like the enemies just aren't fun to fight really. Like a lot of them, like the little fire statues are so dull. You just run through them, get to the bosses, basically just get in and out as quickly as you can, and then the boss is literally like a gimmick. And it just feels really naff for like, especially if you do it in order where you do that almost last, because you could do, and then you're like, oh, now he's going to fight Gwyn, and then like your game's over. Like it is a bit naff.
I don't know why, but I'm not a huge fan of the aesthetic of like that part of Dark Souls 1. Like I don't know why, but it just reminds me of Minecraft. I've never even owned Minecraft, but I don't know why. It just like I don't know if it's because like the graphics obviously don't help some of the textures very well, but then it's like I'm like, oh, it's a bit Minecrafty, this, isn't it? It's like when you just burrow underground on Minecraft and there's bare lava cubes. It kind of just feels like that for me. I'm like, it's like if you go and find a cave underground.
I get what you mean, yeah.
Minecraft.
It's got such an annoying sound effect as well. Like, so basically you fight the centipede demon, you get this ring that allows you to run through lava. Yeah, that's a perfect impression of it. You've got to like wear this ring to like run through all the lava in Lost Izalith, and it is literally just the same noise, literally as Sam was just doing it then, over and over and over again.
I'm glad they ironed some of that stuff out for Dark Souls 3. Like, it feels like they very much just went, what did everyone fucking hate in Dark Souls 1? Cool. Put them in Dark Souls 2. See how much they really hate it, and then we'll leave it all out for Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, real bad. So yeah, that's kind of what we'd like to see, maybe, or not like to see. Have you guys like had any ideas of what you would like them to tackle in terms of like genre, like in the future?
Space.
Anything you think?
That's the thing. I had to think about space. I was like, I don't really
sci-fi.
need Dead Space Miyazaki version or something. Like,
I do.
I don't really want to go.
See, I feel
is anyone watching season 3 of Westworld?
No.
Not yet.
No,
It's
not
kind
yet,
of like
no.
Blade Runner-y, Terminator-y vibes. I'd quite like.
Hey, that I could
that-
see,
I'd quite like
actually.
something
Yeah.
like that actually.
Sort of like Neo Future.
Yeah,
I could,
I'd quite like
Yeah,
a Blade Runner.
When people say like sci-fi, I initially just think like Star Trek, and I'm just like, I don't need
Yeah.
Miyazaki Star Trek.
I was kind of
think,
joking
like,
when I said space, but yeah, something like that I would
Yeah.
absolutely love.
I think as we were saying earlier as well, like when we were talking about Elden Ring, like if that turns out to be like a Thor kind of space, like a Norse god kind of space, that would be.
What are we
Pretty
getting?
cool.
Are we getting Nimoy space or Thor space?
Yeah.
What about
Which
lightsaber
one?
space? What kind of space are we getting when it comes to this space?
Is it Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull kind of space?
No way.
No way. No way. But yeah, I think like Norse gods would be pretty cool. If Elden Ring doesn't do that kind of thing, I think that'd be pretty sweet. Like traveling to different worlds, but not being out and out. Still, because it can still have that element of what From Software do well, which is like sword combat kind of games and that kind of aesthetic. You can still have that, but then have them, using like a Bifrosty kind of thing to travel to different worlds and experience completely different landscapes. Because especially with Dark Souls 3, like the justification for having so many of these different areas within one close proximity is that because it's like the end of time and there's been these cycles that have repeated themselves over and over again, like all the worlds are getting crushed kind of together, and that's why you get so many different areas. But like if they could literally travel to different worlds, it'd be quite cool to like see that, I think, which I'd be pretty down for.
I have a couple of ideas, but like sort of like going off that one that's just came to mind. I wouldn't
If
mind.
Guff just goes Bloodborne 2.
No, but like, sort of like The Matrix has that sort of like vibe of people living in caves and there's this like sort of outer danger. I think I'd like to see something like that, like sort of maybe like people living in isolation. I don't know how that feels. No, but like people sort of living in caves and like maybe sort of like resurfacing, but then having to like protect themselves from like an outward danger, like whether that is aliens, like aliens have invaded, like, because I think like that sort of element of Matrix is actually one of my favorite elements of Matrix, like the actual AI world sort of stuff of like the Matrix in the Matrix is some of my least favorite stuff, but I think the world they live in, like Earth as it is there, where they're all living in caves and they can't go outside because it's very similar to Terminator, that sort of thing. Like I wonder if that sort of world would translate well into like a Miyazaki type thing.
You just like where all the little robots combine together to make a face, don't you? That's what you want to be the big boss at the end.
I just want that. I want it to be Miyazaki made out of robots.
He just likes the big cave sex.
I knew you were gonna bring that up. I knew you were gonna make it somehow about that. No, that's not my ring. That's not my thing. But no, but I would like to see maybe sort of I mean, like, you could even go like new like space when it comes to like colonies, like the idea of being on like a small world, but like humans sort of like being out and like establishing maybe a colony or something, like, because again, like, we know that he does desolate worlds that are like post-crisis sort of quite well. I could see that sort of being like copy and pasted onto something like that. But I was gonna like, I always think this conversation I always feel like is similar to the one about Assassin's Creed, where it's like, all right, well, what do you want to dress like from now on? Like, what do you want to dress like a pirate? Yeah, we'll make one about pirates. Do you want to dress like you're in the Crusades? Well, good luck for you. There's one about Crusades. Italy, you love Italy. You put you in Italy, like. But that's what I mean. Like, they've recently sort of, in the more recent sort of Assassin's Creed games, done what I think a lot of people wanted for a while, which was Egypt.
Yeah,
and I think I'd like sort of like an ancient Egypt aesthetic.
I could fuck with that. That's literally. I was about to compare it to Assassin's Creed before when I was thinking about like where they could, because they've done the kind of like medievally kind of like. Well, I don't know. Like, Dark Souls is pretty medievally in the sense of like the swords and shields and all that stuff. Bloodborne, obviously, like horror genre-esque. So yeah, I think maybe Egyptian would be. And there are those only two. That's it. It's medieval.
No, that's it.
Medieval horror. That's it. Nothing else. So yeah. No, I feel like Egyptian would be a good way to do.
The three genres.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's it. Like, I think if you look at it, it's like they're like, when you look at sort of like ancient Egypt, sort of like there's a lot of different eras that I think in like a sort of like Egyptian-ish world you could just like launch together, where it's like things being built and like, again, like, I think, again, like talking about like gods and things like that, like, you know, I think more than any, like a lot of cultures, you know, there's always been sort of reverence towards gods and things like that. But in Egypt, like, you have these like really sort of like, and there's that whole golden landscape. It feels very much like
aliens.
I don't know. It feels it feels a lot more ethereal in some way, because there was like a lot of gold. They were like, you know, the tombs are these massive pyramids that, you know, have like loads of treasures. I think there's like an element in that sort of, you know, you sort of get like these tombs and things like that in like Bloodborne and things like that. So I think having that on a much grander scale, like everything being like fucking huge, and like, again, maybe even adopting sort of like dungeon-esque stuff from well, like the Fortress of Sen is like a dungeon, you know, from Dark Souls 1, and it's like Sen's Fortress.
There's the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne.
I just remembered about them, actually. I was just going to say, yeah, they could do something on that, couldn't they? Probably.
Yeah, like, I think stuff like that would be really cool, like sort of exploring, and like, I don't know, like, I think that's like a I don't know, more like an interesting take on stuff. Because I think, again, that it's, even if it's just like a king, like, do you know, these kings, like warring kings, and we've sort of had that, but they've been, again, more gods. So if we can sort of like, I don't know, I think Egypt to be a cool thing to base something off. I'd play it.
I suppose that's it, innit? It's like all of them are like, just, we're using this as a base for a concept, because none of it's set in the real world. It's all fancy, magic, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think like the aesthetic of like Egypt and stuff like that, and their kind of mythology would be a really cool thing to base a game around, definitely.
I'm trying to think of other parts of the world that like might be.
Nah, just Egypt.
Just Egypt.
Medieval England, Egypt.
Cold War.
Or Victorian England.
Cold War Russia.
Right now. Coronavirus.
I reckon just snow. The whole level, the whole map is snow.
Matt's going to love that. It's all Ashes of Ariandel. It's his favourite. He's going to...
It's not... I like the snow. The snow's good. The aesthetic and like the
snow's
the place
bit,
is mint. It's like, they're just enemies. Like, there's these trees, man, that are like and like so many wolves, and it's just
Matt hates
crap.
dogs.
He feels like Liam Neeson.
I don't like wolves.
He feels like Liam Neeson in
like
The Grey.
wolves.
He's going to sellotape
Yeah.
little bottles to his hand and smash them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Can I have a Miyazaki game that's cowboys?
Cowboys,
so Matt doesn't know what to do.
He just makes Red Dead 3.
I liked Red Dead 2.
It's supposed to be a mate.
I just don't like. I don't mind old timey cowboys. I just don't like modern day cowboys.
So you love Joe Exotic drive your street, and
Yep.
I want to see Miyazaki tackle modern day cowboys. I want it to be like one of these horse TV shows where it's just full of cowboys.
Just
and,
dead tacky.
yeah, like really, like it's like a CW teen drama, all about owning horses and ranches and shit. But it's Miyazaki's written it for some reason. Miyazaki's teamed up with the creative writing team of The Flash and Supernatural to bring you a new teen series.
No, it's not. It's not even that classic. It sounds like MTV.
It sounds like toddlers in tiaras. That.
Yeah.
That's something I would not like to see him. Like that's the part of the world very much needs to be left alone.
Miyazaki takes on pageanting. the cutthroat world.
I'd love to see like a pageant of his characters he's already done. Like I'd love to see like Gwyn compete against like I don't know
Nameless King
Willem in like a pageant and see like
and Manny Mildred.
Yeah, sort of sack on her head.
Yeah.
If you could change the world, what would you do? We would bring back the old ones, and it's like okay, fantastic.
We
And
need
you?
more eyes. Shut up, Willem. You
I want to just take this bag off my head.
And what about you? World peace, and world hunger.
And on that note, probably the end of the episode, isn't
Is
it?
that the note it's ended on?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
It's better
Good
than
note to
Nips.
end it on. Yeah, better than Nips. For anyone that doesn't know, that's how Rob decided to end our very first video cast. Which might be a while before we get to record another one, so that's our lasting video cast legacy.
I love when I said that. I'm instantly ashamed of myself as well when you rewatch
You
it.
should do.
It's like it's such word vomit. It's like Nips. Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got here.
It's just bad. It's bad all around. But the rest of it is quite good, so go and watch that if you want something to do during isolation.
I don't know. That's one of my favourite bits. You know, when he says Nips.
Yeah, it's quite
it's
funny.
dead funny, isn't it?
It's good. It's good. Yeah, we got loads of other stuff out. So if you're liking this series of our podcast, then you probably like From Software games. So me and Rob do a Dark Souls Let's Play series where we get really competitive and see who can defeat Dark Souls bosses the quickest in Bonfire's Boss. So we've just released an episode where we take on Champion Gunday. So go and check them out. Yeah, when this podcast is out, there'll also be a video of Guff playing Uncharted 4, which is one of this month's free PSN games. So make sure you check that out as well and see if it's worth picking up. Or if you're not interested at all, still watch it because I watched it today and it's a pretty good laugh. And
Film
do
Club.
we have other stuff? Oh, Film Club, yeah. So we're doing... This is the last episode of this series of this podcast. We'll probably be back sooner than normal because we're kind of actually being in isolation and separate from each other has made it easier for us to record
Now
because
El's
of
on.
varying reasons. Yeah, now El's on, and also it means Rob doesn't have to travel up here to come and podcast. So we'll probably have a new series coming soon. We don't know what that'll be yet. But in the meantime, we're running a weekly film club where we basically watch a film and just do a nice little short podcast about it. And Sam's chanting something to me. I don't know what he's
Chanting
saying.
Jumanji.
He's shouting.
Oh, Jumanji. Yeah, maybe we'll finally get around to doing that Jumanji series. Welcome to Jumanji. I'm definitely opening it. If we do a Jumanji series, I'm definitely opening every episode with Welcome to
Can
Jumanji.
Zathura be part of the Jumanji series?
Yes! That's the Sekiro episode.
Yeah, so Film Club, watching a film every week, you get to vote on what we watch. So basically, we'll pick the genre and kind of put a poll out of the films. You pick what we watch. We'll do a little podcast on it. So yeah, check out the Facebook and Twitter.
We'll be live streaming it as well. I think
we'll be live
this
streaming
Saturday
it.
night, I think, probably.
Yes. Oh, as well, yeah, I did a 15.5-hour stream of me watching all 8 Fast and Furious films back to back. So there will be a video of that at some point. But also, people seem to like watching me watch stuff for a really long time. So we're going to be doing more of that. And I think Die Hard series is actually the front runner. So I'll probably be watching the Die Hards at some point. So that'll be live on Facebook. And I'm actually going to put some production value in it because last time it was actually like the night before. I was like, yeah, I'll go live on Facebook.
In your dressing gown.
And I'll probably still be in my dressing gown.
Do you have a green screen?
No.
Can you go full Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Looper and pretend you're Bruce Willis while
Can
watching.
you be on?
No,
can
no,
you be on
I was
Yakuza-
thinking, no, I will get.
Go on.
I was thinking I will get like a white vest for like the last one and just like sit here in a white vest
I
watching
don't
the
know.
last one.
That might it might go from like it's like the intention action hero. What it actually is, man in vest eating crisps, drinking beer, watching
Just
films.
onion rings
I was-
all over
I
the
was gonna
vest,
say,
just
you need to
staining
duct
it.
tape a pack of onion rings to your back so you can pull them out. Like,
No, it's just a Corona bottle. Yeah, so that's going on as well. So as you can tell, we're pretty bored in lockdown, so we're going to have loads of stuff coming out. So just like us on all the socials that are all linked below to keep up to date on that. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
bye.
See ya.
Bye. In this final episode, we're taking a speculative look forward at the upcoming game Elden Ring, and we're going to chat a bit about as well what we'd love to see from.
Oh,
Right,
come on!
You can edit this. Just do them in chunks.
That was
it in
I'm
chunks.
just doing the last bit. I'm just doing the last bit. In this final.
Fuck.